Hello everyone, this is a video on a triangulation technique called perfect triangulation. The purpose of this deck is to minimize the amount of eye throws needed to triangulate once you're close to the stronghold. So the way it works is similar to perfect travel, hence the name, but on a smaller scale. The chart that I have linked in the video description shows the offsets for each angle that you could get if the stronghold was within 12 chunks of your eye throw from a chunk intersection. Some of the values are shown in bold because the angle could mean multiple offsets, so context from previous iframes would be required to identify the correct one. Now I will show you a simple example of how you would use the offsets to locate the stronghold chunk. Once you think you're close to the stronghold, you want to throw an eye on a 4-chunk intersection like this. So let's throw our eye. You probably want to go into 30 FOV to get uh, the angle easier. In this case, our angle is 119.0. So whenever an angle is over 90, you want to subtract 90 from the angle that you have. Here, our actual angle to look up on the chart is 29. Um, and the closest angle that appears on the chart would be 29.1 with an offset of 4.2. If you had an angle with a negative sign, you would just want to ignore that negative sign. So from this iframe, we have an offset of 4.2. So let's go and use that offset. The way I would recommend to do it is to count every time you cross a chunk border. So the higher offset will be uh, will always be the forward chunk border, and the lower offset will be the side chunk border, so that the eye will always point towards the forward chunk border. So let's go and start a count. So the count after crossing this border would be 1 0. After crossing this border would be 2 0. When you cross a side chunk border, you want to add that separately. So if I cross this, the count is 2 1, and so on and so on. So here it would be 3 1, here it would be 3 2, and here it would be 4 2. And essentially, once you hit the offset that was on the chart for that angle, 4.2 was our offset, you should be in the stronghold chunk if you threw the eye close enough to the stronghold. Dig down here on 4, we should be in the stronghold. Yeah. Now let's look at some examples of how you would use it in a run. Two of the examples will be cuts from some of my runs, and one is from practice. In my opinion, this triangulation method is best if you use some form of calculated nether travel. In this example, I'm using simple distance estimation since I've got all my rods already and would not be able to overlap using a more precise method, such as axis calculated with killing blazes. The angle change I get here is 1.4, which is about 750 blocks, which translates to about 100 blocks in the nether. When I come back through the portal, I see that the terrain is pretty good, just along the fortress, and I see the Soul Sand Peninsula that's basically on my angle and looks about the right distance, so I head there to build my second portal. Last thing to keep in mind here is the angle I had from my first portal. Since we're aiming to get within 11 chunks of the stronghold, it's nice to know if we hit the calculated based on the very first eye throw. In this case, my angle was 140, so if the angle I get after my second portal is close to that, I would know that I undershot the distance. Likewise, if you subtract 180 from that, you'd get minus 40, which would be an angle you get if you overshot. I throw my eye on the chunk intersection to use perfect triangulation right off my second portal. I note that the angle is minus 61, which is a 20-degree angle change, meaning that I had hit the calculated as I'm pretty certain I've kept my angle, and it's also on the chart with an offset of 4.2. I'd say I was about 90% confident that I would hit the stronghold here, but if I had used axis calculated, I would have been almost 100% certain. This next example shows how you can use the perfect triangulation chart to infer that the stronghold is further than 11 chunks away. I'm throwing my third eye since I think I'm close to the stronghold, but the angle is minus 164, which would convert to 74, and that does not appear on the chart. Therefore, I can tell that I would still need to travel at least 11 chunks, or about 200 blocks further. I typically like to throw 3 ender pearls if this happens, but the terrain ahead of me is an ocean, so I just boat forward until I get to the coast. Once I get to the coast, I throw another eye, and the angle this time is 18.4. This angle appears on the chart quite a few times, but since I know I couldn't go off angle a lot in that short distance, I picked the closest offset of 1, 0. If you're high rolling exclusively for good blind distances that are closer than 4, maybe 500 blocks, you could skip distance estimation altogether and just use perfect triangulation every 200 blocks or so, although this strategy would be pretty risky. In the next example, I do exactly that since my blind time was pretty awful. I have divine travel here, so I know that there's a higher than usual chance of getting an extremely close stronghold. I throw an eye, hoping that the stronghold might be ocean exposed at first, but it leads me towards land. I get an angle of exactly 80 degrees throwing at the chunk intersection, which is an offset of 8-1, so I start heading there. My plan is to throw another eye once I get closer to the chunk. I know that the chunk to the left of me is the one that the chart suggested, and I consider throwing another eye to confirm, but I check my timer and I realize I just have to send the dig down, so I don't bother risking an eye throw. And that's gonna be it for the examples. If you want to try this technique yourself, you can find the link to the chart in the description. Thanks for watching.